My name is Eric. I'm an outreach coordinator for GreenThumb, and I want to thank you all for coming in to Leslie Costa's soap making workshop. And again, you are participating in GreenThumb's 37th annual GreenThumb Grow Together. This one is completely virtual, and it will be recorded. So those that are joining us right now, if you do not want to be on the recording, simply click that video off button on the bottom of your screen. Okay, so anyway, Leslie Costa is going to be doing our workshop and showing us her some of her tips and techniques. She started soap making from scratch and learned this from Spain. These days, she makes soap at home for her friends, her family, and for her small business in her Manhattan home. So I'm going to turn off my mic and Leslie, turn the mic over to you. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'm nervous, so be patient with me, but I do know what I'm doing, so we'll get this done. I gave Mara and Eric some documents so you can follow along, and you might want to take notes. But today hopefully we'll have enough time to make 2 different batches of soap. The first time we'll go through step by step. The second time we'll go through a little more quickly, according to how much time we have. Okay, so I want to show you first, this is soap. We all know what soap is. A lot of what's sold at the supermarket actually is not soap. A lot of what is sold in the store is actually detergent, okay? And it's made with petroleum products. The soap that I'm talking about is cold process. There's 3 different processes that I use. Make liquid soap, make hot process, which means you cook the soap, or you make cold process soap, which is what we're going to do today, okay? Cold process soap is sodium hydroxide mixed with some sort of oil, okay? So we're going to end up with something like this, a different shape, but the same quality, and you control the properties of your soap. And my phone is making noise. Listen to this, look at this, okay? So, so that's the soap part. Now, the oil when you're making your soap and you're writing your recipe, you choose which oils you're going to use. Each oil has certain qualities, and some qualities are more desirable than others. Like for instance, I always love to have coconut oil in my soap because coconut oil is very cleansing, okay? The chemical reaction that occurs between sodium hydroxide, lye, and coconut oil results in a very cleansing bar, okay? But you don't want your soap to be 100% coconut oil. I also like olive oil. I also like almond oil. The sky's the limit. But for me, I always include coconut oil because it's nice and cleansing. And I also always include castor oil, okay? And the reason I include castor oil is because it makes bubbles. And although there's no correlation between bubbles and cleanliness, we've been habituated to think the more bubbles, the more cleaning power it has. That's not really true, but it is something that we enjoy. So I always include some castor oil. But once again, you don't want to add too much because it will make your soap soft. So what I passed on to our presenters here, Mara and Eric, is some recipes. And I'll be reading from these recipes as we go along here. All right, so first of all, lye oil, everybody knows what oil is. Lye is sodium hydroxide, which is a caustic alkaline, and it will burn you, okay? It will burn you. Pure English, it will burn you. But the same way that you have respect for hot oil on a stove, a wild animal, your mother, or if you had let's say a firearm, something like that, or a car, the same way that you follow certain rules when you're using it, that's the same situation that we're in. In order to have a good relationship, a good soap making relationship, you're gonna have to respect the lye, okay? Because if you don't respect it, you will get burnt, okay? And you don't, then it's no longer fun. Okay, fine. So I have my gloves. You can get more serious gloves, but I like these because I can still feel things. I can still touch things, but you need to protect your hands. You need to make sure your feet are covered, okay? What else do you want to do? You want to put on glasses. Well, I have glasses. You might wear goggles. You want to have long sleeves, not long kimono sleeves. You just, you want to have your arms covered. What else do you want to do? I put a protective covering. You can barely see my surface here, but I put some brown paper on my table. And honestly, a lot of times I haven't done that and I've ruined many tables. So you would want to cover it. You can either cover it with plastic or some kind of paper because things do spill. You're avoiding that, but things do spill and you want to minimize the damage that is caused. Okay, so you also, in terms of protective gear, recent years, I've been making soap for a while. Recent years, what I'll do is I'll take a bottle, like this is a little spray bottle, and most of the time I don't need to use it, but it's a bottle of water and I put vinegar in it, okay? Because sodium hydroxide is a base, pH 14, and vinegar is an acid, pH 1. If I was to spill something, I would spray it or I would pour it on there depending on the size of it, just to neutralize whatever's going on. I also have a washcloth here, and I just put a little bit of vinegar on the washcloth. Now, these are two things that I probably am not going to need, okay? But it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Okay, so these are little protections that you can create for yourself. But more important than anything is for you to just be careful. That's the most important thing. Just be careful. All right, now most of the things that we're doing today, I've already measured out. And the reason is that the space is kind of tight and it's not, I'm using my computer camera and you can't really see everything I'm doing up close. But we're going to unplug and I covered my little scale with saran wrap because I spill things. And this is to help prevent damaging the scale. All right, now in terms of soap making, you need your sodium hydroxide. I like this company. I'm not doing advertisement for them, but they're pretty consistent. But there's a lot of companies out there that make sodium hydroxide. And if you're not committed to making soap, you can buy lye from the store, from the supermarket, but read your label. Make sure that it's 100% lye. You don't want your sodium hydroxide mixed with anything else. Okay, so let's see. You have your lye. Here's my lye. And where are we going? Oh, that's the other thing I was going to say. Different oils have different saponification values. So in order to make soap, you mix your oil with the sodium hydroxide. The chemical reaction that occurs from that results in a bar of soap. Each oil has its own saponification number, okay? And that is how much sodium hydroxide you need to add to a fixed amount of this oil in order to turn it into soap. Okay, so in the recipe that we're going to do, the first one, we're going to do the olive oil recipe. I know it's small and hard to read, but I'll read it to you, and we'll just go on from there. Maybe before we actually start measuring, I'll talk to you about herbs, because that is part of what we're talking about today. So there are different things that you can grow in the garden that you can add to your soap. In my experience, a lot of times when I used to add rosebuds, where's my rosebuds? I used to add these teeny tiny rosebuds to my soap, and I loved it. I loved it. But the fact of the matter is the chemical reaction would discolor the rosebuds. Okay? Aside from the fact that, you know, when I got in the shower, I would have these little pieces of things coming out of my soap. So for me, I prefer to do my herbal infusions, or I prefer to treat my herbs one of three ways, okay? And I'll run through it real quick here. What you can do, I'll start off with the hot one first. Last summer, I was in Union Square, and they had this beautiful chamomile buds, the flower. And for me, that's unusual. And for me, chamomile is expensive, okay? Chamomile oil, essential oil. So, but I like it. So anyway, I bought the chamomile buds. I washed them, I dried them thoroughly, and I put them in a bowl like this one, in a pot, well, in this bowl, in this pot, and I covered it with coconut oil. Basically, you submerge it in coconut oil. And what I did was I simmered it on a flame for like 2-3 hours. Okay, simmer, don't cook, simmer. And what that does is it extracts some of the qualities from the herb into the oil. Okay, you let the oil cool, you can put it in a jar. This is the jar I keep it in. And when you're ready to use it, you use it, okay? Now, the other process that you could do, I wet my table. The other process you can do is you can take that same chamomile, imagine, or whatever herb, the peppermint, the whatever herb you want to use. You take those same herbs, wash them, dry them thoroughly, put them in a jar like this jar right here. You stuff them in, right, to a certain height. And once again, you submerge it in oil, all right? And you want to make sure that it's completely covered by oil, because if the herb is sticking up, it can start to rot, and that'll ruin your mixture, okay? If you can get this kind of jar, or whatever jar you decide to use, if you can get it in dark glass, even better, okay? Because if you go online, they'll suggest that you put it in the window and let the sun heat it. And that'll go on for a couple of weeks, you know, to let the sun provide the heat. Me personally, because I'm using a clear jar, what I would do is close it, make sure my herbs are submerged under the oil, put this jar under my sink in a nice, warm, dry, dark place. And every couple of days, and after, you know, a couple of weeks, you have an infusion that you can use, okay? Now, for all of these infusions that I'm suggesting, I personally use coconut oil. Coconut oil doesn't go rancid as a general rule, but you can use other oils, and I suggest you go online or grab a book and do some research to decide which oil you do prefer. But me personally, I'm going with coconut. That's what I'm using today. So those are your 3 different processes. Oh no, that's 2 of the processes. The third process is I would take that same imaginary herb, whatever that is, wash it, dry it. You're always going to wash and dry it. And then I would put it in my blender, okay, with a little bit of water or a little bit of oil, the same way you would do if you were making pesto, okay? And just let the blender turn it into a grainy liquid, you know? So the point is that when you add this to your soap, you're no longer adding chunks, you're no longer adding bits, you know, you're just making a homogeneous solution. Okay, so those are my 3 ideas about how to add herbs to your soap. So if you go online, okay, you can find, there are different websites. You Google soap calculator. You can go to these different websites and they will calculate. You tell them what oil you want to use, how much of it you want to use, and they'll write a recipe for you. Okay, they will. I think I only started using them about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I never even used them. I think it's really important that you learn how to write your own recipe, okay? It's better because then you know where you're going. You know what you actually want to do rather than just following somebody else's direction. So in order to write your own recipe, you need to know how much oil you want to use. And the one that we're going to do right now is olive oil, coconut oil, and castor oil. So like I said, most of this I already measured out, but just for the sake of you seeing, can you see me? For the sake of you seeing, I'm going to do it in front of here. So we have the saponification value of olive oil is 0.134. And I'm going to make a full solution of 16 ounces. And of that 16 ounces, I want 10.4 ounces to be olive oil. So in grams, that would be 1.39 ounces of sodium hydroxide that would be needed. But in grams, times 28.35, 1 ounce equals 28.35 grams. So we end up with 294.84 grams of olive oil. So let's make sure. So you take your scale. This is a big bowl. Let's see. Take your scale, and hopefully your scale cooperates. And you want to do your measurements by weight. Now, yeah, you want to do your measurements by weight. So I can see the numbers over here, which is why I pre-measured everything, but you can't see the numbers. Trust me, I'll let you know. So this is my olive oil. My olive oil, which you can get, I'm telling all my secrets. You can get it for a good price from Walmart, okay? And it's perfectly good olive oil, all right? So this is my olive oil, 200. Yep, there we go, there we go. That's my 294.84, and I rounded it up to 295 because my scale doesn't measure 2 decimal points. So this is what we're gonna mix everything in. Then I have my coconut oil. And you know what? I'm gonna put that into my olive oil container, which is now empty. Once again, you tear your scale so it reads 0. So it's no longer measuring the container. And now it starts to measure once I start pouring in. The saponification value of coconut oil is 0.191. And I want 4.8 ounces of coconut oil. So that ends up being 136.1 grams of coconut oil. And assuming I did this right, I should have the right amount. 131, come on, keep going. There we go. And I'm going to take that and pour it into the olive oil. You with me so far? And I see, hang on a second. Something fell in there. Oh, a leaf. Look at that. All right. So now I'm going to take my castor oil, which I only need a teeny bit. And I'm going to use my teeny tiny container. And I'm going to zero out my scale once again and pour. Keep going. There we go. Now, stay there, baby. This saponification value of castor oil is 0.128. And I only want 0.8 ounces of castor oil. And that's going to be 22.68 grams. And that's what this is. This is 23 grams. And I'm going to pour that into and I'm going to scrape, because castor oil is sticky. So it has a tendency to cling. And I'm going to take my containers. And I'm going to dry my gloves. And I'm going to move some stuff out of the way. So let me just move this to the side. Where to put it? There's a little room. I'll move it to the side for a second. Now, when you make, and let me move the scale out of the way. When you make soap, you have to make a lye solution. And I've already made my lye solution. I made this the other day. Now, normally when you make soap, you have to, you have your water, you measure out your water. What did I do with my water? Oh, there it is. You measure out your water. And I actually need 149, let's call it 150 grams of water. Okay. And what you do is, this is my sodium hydroxide that I've already measured out. We're not going to use this, what I'm doing right now, we're not going to use it. And I'll tell you why. When I add this sodium hydroxide to this water, the chemical reaction creates a whole lot of heat. Okay? One thing I forgot to tell you, make sure you have your windows open. Okay? You need to have the air ventilated because the chemical reaction creates heat and there's a certain odor. Okay? You don't need to be doing this in a closet. You need to have air moving. Okay? So you're not affected by it. But also, the solution can get like 200 degrees hot, and then you have to wait for it to cool down before you can use it. I skipped that point. I used to do this for years and years, wait for that. Now what I do is I take my nice, good quality glass, heavy glass. I make my soap solution, my sodium hydroxide solution, and I store it in a safe container, and I put it under the cabinet where it's not exposed to children, animals, and you know, like you would treat anything that shouldn't be around children or animals or any other live beings. But you put it in a safe place and you just store it this way. So it's already room temperature. And when you're ready to use it, you can use it. But I'm just doing this so you can see how it goes. So this is my water. I know it's a big container for such a small amount of water. Here's my sodium hydroxide. It's the same amount of water, the same amount of sodium hydroxide that I would be using. But I've already gotten us to the next step where I've cooled off the solution. You pour it in here. Oh, yeah, you pour it in there. And you can use, I like to use a chopstick personally. And stir it. You see what I'm saying? Now, normally I wouldn't be sitting right up on top of it because this is one of the rules, okay? But I have on my goggles and I can, do you see the smoke coming off of it? Can you see that? You're not trying to inhale that. Let me step back a little. You want your windows open. Yeah. So you stir it and it has a tendency to cling to your glass jar, but you stir it until all the granules are dissolved and dispersed into your liquid, and you have a fairly homogeneous liquid solution. And then you can set it to the side and let it cool down a little bit. Okay. I'm going to sit it in the sink. So here we go. You see how it is? Now, at some point, this solution is going to clear up a little bit. Okay? You'll notice that it clears up slightly. But anyway, just to keep it out of our way, I'm going to put it in the sink. But I just wanted you to see what it looks like when you're mixing it. All right, so now we have our oil. We have our sodium hydroxide solution. And, oh, maybe we should talk about molds. So I'm assuming that most of you aren't soap makers, because why would you be here if you're a soap maker? Although I can go online and just watch video after video of people making soap. I can do that, yeah, so yeah, okay. But anyway, I'm going to assume that you don't have any professional soap molds at home. You can use, you can use a plastic container because you want to be able to pop it out, okay? You want to be able to pop it out. So this is my feta cheese container that I got from Trader Joe. That's a good candidate. What you do is, well, you know what? I'm not going to show you in this one. Hang on a second, because I want to show you in the one that I'm actually going to use. Then you have this mold. Now these are old, these are real soap molds, but they're old as, and a lot of them are broken, but I just really love the shape of this soap. So we're going to use this, okay? Even though they're broken, I'm going to sandwich them. And that's not how you would do this if you had 100% good quality in shape mold. But I'm just going to do it this way just to make sure nothing leaks. But there are 3 plastic molds. And what you do is you take coconut oil, shea butter, and you just run your finger around. Can you see what I'm doing? You run it like if you're making a cake and you are just oiling the pan. That's what you're doing, okay? And you just do it with each opening. I hope you can see what I'm doing. You just oil the pan, okay? 1 second. and you oil the pan. So you have 3 molds that are oiled, okay? I'm gonna set these on the side for a second. You can also use silicone molds. This is really an ice cube tray. These don't need to be oiled, okay? Yeah, you can do that. You can do the feta cheese or whatever, you know, your margarine container, whatever works for you. Then, now I have molds, but this is an Apple product, and I just like the size of this box, okay? So I bought an Apple product. I don't even know what came in this box, but I held on to the box because I wanted to make a giant piece of soap. So this is what I'm going to do right now. Now there is, you see I put a lining in it, okay? Now this is just paper from the store and I oiled it. But what you really should be using in here is freezer paper. I didn't have access to freezer paper. It's that heavy white paper that has like a wax covering on one side. But basically you line the inside of your box, okay? And you tape it down. And I think I included a link. There's a woman on YouTube who shows you a really beautiful way of how to line this box without too many extra steps, you know? It was good, it was good. So we're gonna use this box for this first soap. Okay, so now coming back to the actual soap, we're also, we're also going to use, this is chamomile oil, the oil that I just showed you that I made on the stove. This is going to be the herbal addition that we're making to this soap. Now, going back to the recipe, I have the olive oil, I have the coconut oil, I have the castor oil, okay? And the saponification, I gave saponification numbers and final weight amounts for those oils. But whenever I make soap, I always add at the end extra fat, okay? I put my additives at the end and I add extra fat that doesn't get saponified. And the reason for that is because you end up with a more delicious bar of soap. You end up with not soap that just does the job, but it's like soap that removes dirt, but it also adds back a light layer of oil to your skin. All right, so you don't have soap that just strips your skin clean, if you get what I'm saying. So in that case, that's what this is. Now this is coconut oil, and coconut oil's perfectly good, but I'm doing double duty here. I've got the coconut oil, as you see, but I also have the chamomile that I cooked into the oil, what I was showing you a few minutes on the pot, on the stove. So let me make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself. Okay. Now, when you mix your soap, should I put color in here? Ooh, no, we'll go simple first. We'll go simple. All right. So when you mix your soap, you want to pour this. There's certain things you're looking for when you mix soap. Okay. When you mix your soap, and we'll go through it in a second, you get to an emulsified appearance. And that's just when everything's all mixed together. And then you get to a point where you can drip, you can let some of the soap drop back into the solution, and it covers over, it becomes a homogeneous surface once again, and that's called a light trace. And you can get to a medium trace where those droplets that fall back in sit on the surface. And then there's a point, but eventually mix back in. And then there's a point where it just sits on the surface and that's it. When it just sits on the surface, That's a full trace. When you get to a full trace, you want to pour your soap, okay? Where did I put it? Oy vey, where did I put it? 1 second. I have, well, you know, oh, it's right here, right in front of my nose. This is my scent. I have some orange essential oil that we're going to be using today. Essential oils in general, okay, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Certain fragrances that you can add to your soap solution will cause the process I just described, light trace, medium trace, full trace, to speed up, okay? And depending on what kind of mold you're using, that can cause a problem. Essential oils in general do not cause the accelerated trace process to occur. So today we're using essential oil. This is orange essential oil. All right, so I think you can see me. I'm gonna open my sodium hydroxide. I mixed it like you saw before. I let it cool down, and now it's all cool. So we don't have to look for that perfect temperature to add it to the solution. All right, and now I pour it in. Now all of this is happening with me sitting down, and in reality, when I'm working, I'm standing. But for the sake of the camera, I need to sit down so that you can see me and all of this can be on. But normally I wouldn't work this close, in this close proximity. It's much better if you're standing and you have some distance. But once again, we have our gloves, we have our goggles, we have our long sleeves, our feet are covered. We're respecting the line, okay? We're respecting the lye. So now I've poured the lye into the oil, and I have my whisk. If you want to buy a stick blender, you can buy a stick blender, and that will make this process much faster. I'm going to move this away from me. So you see how it's starting to emulsify? It's just like a cloudy mixture. I'm going to add my chamomile oil, my coconut infused with chamomile oil to the soap mixture. And this isn't a trace yet. Olive oil traces slowly as a general rule. And it looks soft and mushy for a while after you pour it into the mold. But as time goes on, it creates a nice hard bar. You'll love it. You'll love it. Here's my orange oil. So I'm going to pour that there.
Leslie, is that essential oil mixed with a carrier oil?
No, it's straight essential oil.
Okay, thanks. That was just
Straight
a question
essential.
that popped up.
Say that again?
That was just a question that I thought was, particularly relevant to what you're doing right now.
No, it's just straight essential oil. Yeah. So normally I only make one batch at a time, but olive oil can take a while to start that process because you don't want to pour your soap into your mold until you have a trace. We don't have a trace yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this on the side. Is that okay with you? And I'm going to start our second soap. Okay? So, Mara, are there any questions yet?
There are a few questions. Yes, this is Venus.
What kind of questions do you have?
So we just had the question about the essential oil, which you answered. One of the other questions is, can you buy the sodium solution already mixed?
No. No.
The other question is, should you not use metal implements with lye?
I use, okay, you can use stainless steel with lye, but what you cannot use, okay, for stirring, I use wood. You could use a spoon. It's better to use wood, which is why I use the chopsticks. Okay, I have my metal whisk. All right. If you're using a pot, like if I'm making a large batch, today we're making tiny batches, but if I'm making a large batch, I'm using a pot and it's stainless steel. What you never ever want to use is aluminum. Aluminum, nah, forget it. Don't even use aluminum. That's not even a choice. You have any more questions?
Yeah, there's a couple more questions. So just wanted to clarify on the lye mixture.
Yeah.
Did you use distilled water for that?
Yes, absolutely. Good question. I'm sorry about that. I have a distillation machine. So when I keep misplacing my water bottle. But anyway, yes, you use distilled water. Yeah.
Okay. And some others are, can you only make soap with lye?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then lastly, I'm sure we'll have more questions come up as you continue on, but how long does herb infused oil typically last for?
Well, I put it in coconut oil, which doesn't go rancid, which is why I put it in coconut oil. If I were to put it in an oil, if I were to put it in any other oil, now your infused oil is depending on how long your oil lasts. So once your oil goes rancid, like if I put it in shea butter, almond oil, at some point those oils are going to go off, and now your whole batch is no good. Okay, I'm going to use this coconut oil long before it goes bad. Okay, or bad, because coconut oil doesn't go rancid. You see what I'm saying? Which is why I'm using it. Does that answer the question?
I think that does answer the question. I think one of the follow-up questions to that is, will it last longer if you refrigerate it? Are there any suggestions?
Oh, absolutely refrigerate it. Yeah, definitely. Everything lasts longer if you refrigerate it. Yeah, for
Great.
sure.
I don't know if you want to continue to take questions now, or do you want to move on to the second soap?
No, go ahead. Let's see.
Okay.
If
Okay.
this starts to go into a trace, I forgot that olive oil takes a minute to go into trace. But no, you ask me more questions and then we'll do a second part at the end.
Great. So this actually is perfect. You were just talking about trace. Some of the questions are, can you talk through how you know when you have a trace and are ready to pour into a mold?
Okay, when you have trace, which we don't have right now, okay, when you have trace, what is it like? I guess if you bake or anything and you whip something, it becomes thicker and thicker and thicker. First of all, it will not be this loose. It will not be this loose. It'll have less movement than what it has now. But also, when I do this, okay, it won't immediately flow back into the solution like water and join the entire solution. It will sit on the top, it will sit on the surface. So what you drop back down will form like, it will be on the surface of the solution. When it's a light trace, it'll be on the surface of the solution and then it joins the solution and the surface becomes homogeneous like water, okay? But when it's a full trace, it continues to sit on the surface. All right, we're gonna see it today, so don't worry, you'll see it today.
Great. So we have a couple of questions related to expiration dates.
Okay.
So, some scenarios are, if I have a bottle of olive oil that is 2 years old, can I use it for soap making?
You know, I would. I wouldn't eat it, but I would use it for soap.
Great.
Yeah.
And a follow-up to that is coconut oil purchased has the coconut oil I purchased has an expiration date. How does this affect the expiration of the soap?
I don't say that soap expires. Okay. I don't tend to add food to my soap. I don't tend to, okay. I don't say that soap expires. I say soap does not expire. All right, it's not a food product. It's, how do I explain that? Does that make sense at all?
It makes sense to me. I think the general question is, I guess the concern in these questions is that they want to make sure that if an oil, whether it's coconut or olive oil, is expired or you're using it for soap making after the expiration date on the label, that it's not the same as if you were consuming it.
Agreed. The stores give you an expiration date for their own list of reasons. In my opinion, and this, I don't know if I was someone might disagree with me, but if I had oil that had passed its expiration date, I would still feel free to use it to make soap. Rather than if the choice is make soap or throw it in the garbage, I'm making soap. It's not going in the garbage. So for that purpose of making soap, it's perfectly fine. In terms of eating, no, it's no longer fine.
Perfect. I think that perfectly answers those questions. Yep. I think one last one before you maybe start on the second demo. How do you keep coconut oil at liquid state in the winter?
You don't. Which is why I have all of this mishigas going at the stove. So you have the double boiler, or the makeshift double boiler with the water in it. And you just simmer it. So, I mean, you can also do it in the sink. This is the coconut oil that I'm working with today. And if you don't want to put in a double boiler, you can always put it in the sink in a pot full of hot water from the tap, and just, let it get warm enough. Leave it there to sit in a nice sealed jar, and eventually it will melt enough for you to use.
Great. Would you like to take a few more questions, or do you want to hold off on those until the end?
One more.
Okay. Would you change your gloves after handling the lye?
You know what? You should change your gloves as many times as you feel you need to. Okay? Me personally, I wouldn't, because I've done this enough times where I know how to touch the lye. Like, I just touched this, well, we'll use this container. Well, I just touched this container, but I touched the outside. I'm not putting my finger in. If I did do that, and I have done that, and that's not good practice, but if I did actually come in contact with the lye, okay, and I had any concern whatsoever that it was on my fingers and that I was going to be leaving that in other places, yes, I would change my gloves. Okay, but because I have experience making soap, I know not to touch certain things. All right, so you change your gloves as many times as you feel that you need to.
Great. Thank you so much, Leslie. We'll hold the others until the end of your second demo, and keep the questions coming, guys. They're great. Thank you so much.
All right, so the second batch, now wait, this first batch here is still, it hasn't traced yet. So I'm gonna go to the second batch, and hopefully by the time, we've got 40 minutes, and by the time we get to the end of this second batch, hopefully everybody will have gone to trace, okay? So this second batch, I've already mixed it together because you've already got the concept of weighing out your individual ingredients. And this particular soap is soybean oil, coconut oil, castor oil, and shea butter. Okay, now all of those ingredients are already in this solution here. All right, I probably can get this out of the way. And I have my lye solution. If I can open it. Okay, so I'm going to just pour that into my, right? I'm going to save this because I'm going to do something with this in a second. Okay. So once again, you start mixing your solution. In this case, actually, I switched the recipes. In this case, this was really supposed to be the chamomile one, but it went into the olive oil. So this one, I'm going to give it the shea butter. And this is my super fat. Now, normally what you would do is weigh this out on the scale. But I already know what it weighs, so I'm just gonna put it in. This is my super fat. And this, you choose your super fat according to the qualities that you want. You might want almond oil. You might want some black cumin oil, black seed oil, cumin seed oil, argan oil, you know, whatever you like. And that's your super fat. And that's so you just add that little bit of deliciousness to your soap, okay? And we'll mix that in. Now, you couldn't do this with a stick blender. I burnt my last stick blender out, so we're doing whisk. But you could, a lot of people use stick blenders. I have seaweed here, and that's going to play the part. You know what? No, I'm not going to use the seaweed. I have turmeric. Listen to me. So we're not going to do seaweed. We're going to do turmeric. And I just wanted to make this slightly different. Now, when you go to do this, you'll be using the herbs from your garden, whatever, you know, whatever additive you would like to add. Now, I have my 2 jars. And what I want to do, and hopefully I can do it neatly, is divide this solution in half. So we can perfectly fine leave this solution in the container as it is and pour it into the mold as it is when it goes into trays. But what I'm trying to do right now, what I would like to do for entertainment purposes, is to split this into 2 solutions. One, I will color it with titanium dioxide and it'll make it white. The other one, I will color with turmeric and it'll make it yellow, right? And then you mix them separately. Hopefully before this class is over, it will go to trace. And then we can pour them into the mold as like a mosaic, like a marbling kind of effect. So that's what we're actually doing. Let's see if I can do this without spilling it. in case I spill it. You know what? I have to stand up for this. And I'll bring this one closer. And there's no, we've already put the sodium hydroxide in with the oil. So the molecules of oil are receiving the right amount of sodium hydroxide. So it's okay to split the soap in the proportion that you like. That's loud. Okay. So the next step, so we've got 2 jars, and that's only because I'm going to color the soap. If I wasn't going to color the soap, I would just leave it in one container until it went to trace. This is my my titanium dioxide. Now, I don't usually color my soap. I don't usually color my soap. So it's really just kind of like an experiment, you know? But for the sake of this class, you can imagine that this is the equivalent of you adding ground peppermint, dried peppermint that you ground up into like a powder, you know? So if you're not going to add titanium dioxide to your soap, which makes it white, then you can imagine that this is you taking whatever herb you have and you grind it up teeny, tiny, teeny, tiny. Wow, I have a muscle spasm. Okay. And you just stir it in. And I might need more. And this is my turmeric powder. Okay. These to the side. This is my titanium dioxide. You can find it online. There's a lot of people that color their soap. I'm just going to add a teeny bit more because I want it to show as white.
It's 1 o'clock.
Ooh, it's 1 o'clock. Okay. So I stir, oops. Now, I don't know if you can see this. One second. Ooh. But it's starting to get thick. It's starting to get thick. Starting. And I've also seen people take things like, you know, whether it's herbs or mica, you know, or, you know, colorants, and they'll dissolve it in oil first and then add it to the soap. and that might help it disperse better. But you can see that we now have a whitish solution and an orangish solution. Okay. And they're closer to trace. I don't know if you can see that. Oops. They're closer to trace. They're getting thicker. They're getting thicker. Okay, so I'm gonna set that on the side. And we're gonna follow the bouncing ball, go back to the first solution, and check where that is. Now this is still not tracing yet. But you can smell that orange. That smells really nice. Okay. So we're gonna let that continue. And I have cardamom, ylang ylang, and tangerine oil that I mixed. I'm going to add that to these two soaps. Now, my total solution should be 1 ounce. And technically, you could measure that at the beginning, but I'm just going to eyeball it rather than pull the scale out again. And I stir that in. Now, if I was using fragrance oils, let me pull this back so you can see it better. If I was using fragrance oils, this would probably be at trace already. Fragrance oils tend to trace faster than essential oils.
Leslie, can you explain a little bit more about trace and why at this state, why we couldn't just pour the soap into the molds?
There are some people online who would pour it into the molds at this point. Well, this one still isn't ready. So I don't know if you can see, but that's still jiggly. It's still very jiggly. Hold on. And when I do that, it doesn't affect the surface of the soap at all. There's no sign that it has thickened up, which is why I'm not going to pour it right now. It is emulsified. It is emulsified, but it's not at trace yet. So whereas this one, can you see that? This is a light trace. Hang on a second. This is a light trace. So online, you will see people pour at this point. And that's very often because they're going to do with things to the soap when it's in the mold. I personally prefer to pour when it's at least a medium trace. These two are fully emulsified, so if I poured them right now, it wouldn't be a problem. But I do suggest that you wait until the trace has developed more fully. This olive oil one, the first one we did, it's not really ready to pour. So why don't we answer questions while we wait for the soap to move to the next step? Are there any questions left?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of questions, so we can definitely move on to those. Going back to the water you used for the lime mixture, there's a question about whether or not rainwater could be used opposed to distilled.
I suppose you could do anything. I suppose you could use rainwater, but I wouldn't. Okay. Distilled water, the purpose of distilled water is that it's just water. It doesn't have any minerals in it, and sodium hydroxide will interact with the minerals. Okay. And you might get an effect. I'm sure you would be able to make soap with rainwater. I'm sure you would, but because of the minerals that exist in rainwater, you probably would have some sort of reaction that would show up in your soap. Just to avoid all kinds of surprises, I just use distilled water.
Great, thank you. Another question is, does the fragrance dissipate over time if the soap is not wrapped?
Yes. Yes. So certain fragrances, certain scents are more likely to dissipate. Okay, citrus scents, lemon, lime, orange, what else? Lemongrass, they tend to dissipate quicker. Okay, heavier scents like peppermint, patchouli, vetiver, those heavier scents tend to last longer in soap. But yes, all molecules eventually evaporate. So you will lose a good amount of your scent. Okay. Some people suggest mixing your scent, your essential oil, with clay. All right. Personally, clay, I find clay, it adds its own quality to the soap. It makes the soap, it has a drying effect on the skin. All right. So you have to decide how much of that do you want in your soap. Do you want your soap to have a quality where it dries? But supposedly mixing clay and essential oil will cause the scent to last longer in the soap.
Great, thank you. Talk a little bit about the materials you're using. So we see you're using glass bowls, and we heard earlier that you mentioned using possibly wooden spoons. So can you talk about the materials you're using and what materials you should be using for soap making?
Okay. Well, you need your sodium hydroxide, you need your distilled water. I prefer Pyrex. Now you can use number 5 heavy duty plastic. I tend to not, I mean, I'll use plastic, you know, but I minimize the amount of plastic that I use. Number 5, heavy duty plastic supposedly is tolerant of the sodium hydroxide solution. I'm used to Pyrex, okay? So I prefer glass. Glass is non-reactive. So that's what I do. You need a scale. This table is blocking my closet, but I used to have a weight and balance scale, and that's what I used for 20 years, okay? And I just recently invested in one of these. They're not terribly expensive, and they work fairly well. And you're not moving weights. You just sit it there, and it tells you. It helps if you have a thermometer. I have an old school thermometer, but since I let my lye solution cool off, I don't really use the thermometer. But a lot of younger people, listen, a lot of newer soap makers, they use a infrared thermometer, and they just check the temperature of the solution, But like I said, because I let my lye cool off, I take the whole temperature issue out of the equation. Okay, but you should learn how to use the thermometer. You can use a stick blender, but as I said, I burnt out my stick blender and I use my whisk. And this is really the beater from a mixing bowl, from a mixer that I no longer have, but it works perfectly fine. Ah, we've got trace. All right, hang on. So look at this. The olive oil still hasn't traced yet, right? And wow, let me see if I can show you this. I hope you can see this. Can you see how that's become thicker? And can you see that I can't tip it too much. Let me try this one. Can you see that this has become thicker? And can you see that when it falls back to the surface, it doesn't become homogeneous like water? It kind of sits on the surface. Can you see that? Right? You can pour. You can pour now. So we're going to pour. Now, so I think I'll use this box. And I oiled the inside of my box. But if I had freezer paper, that heavy white paper that has the waxy covering on it, you don't need to oil it. So let's see, should we sit on something? I'm gonna sit this on top of my bowl and hopefully you'll be able to see better. Is that better? Okay. Now, there's lots of fancy footwork we can do where you mix the two oils together, the two solutions together. Pour one, pour the other, pour one. Once you start going into trace, you don't want to dilly-dally too much because you'll end up with solid soap in your cup, you know? But what I was saying before about essential oils, they tend to be a bit slower. Okay. So I still have a little bit of white left. You know what? I'll save that for the end. And I'll just take this. You can pour it any way you like, but do you see how thick this has become? You see how it's more like whipped heavy cream, something like that. So I'm just going to pour it in here. Wow, how do I let you see what's inside? Oh, can I? And you just kind of let the white come in. You with me? Ah!
It looks amazing, Leslie.
Okay. So I have no doubt you'll do a better job than I did, but in any case, once you've poured your soap into the mold, you tap it. You're tapping it because you want to let the air bubbles come out. Okay, and this is what we got. Can you see that? Now, what I could do, no, I won't. What I was thinking to do is pour this last bit on top. But what I think I will do is pour it into the silicone mold. And so what I'm going to do first is just give this a good little wipe off. I spilled a little. And I'm going to sit it to the side for a minute. And I'm going to take this teeny bit, because even though it's a little bit, it's soap. This is soap. And I have my mold, and I'm just going to pour this in there. Just let it fill up. And this will be like cute little traveling soap. You know? It's also a great way to not waste. You know? You don't want to waste your soap. You know what went into the soap. We've got our shea butter, our coconut oil, our cardamom oil, our ylang-ylang and tangerine. Oh God, that costs money. You don't want to waste it. Besides, you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. So you put that over, and again, you tap your container. And that's just to release, to get all the soap to settle into the container and cause the bubbles to come up to the top. You probably don't have that many bubbles, but you're just checking to make sure. And I'm going to put this on the side. I'm going to go back and check my olive oil. We're still having a slow trace here. But you know what I will tell you? That smells good. That's one thing about this. You'll become addicted to essential oils. You will, yeah. So anyway, I'm still really not at a trace here, but it's enough that I can pour it. Okay? But I'm going to hold off for a second. Do you have more questions?
Yes, we have loads of questions.
So let's do some.
Sure. Do you ever make black soap? Is there a different process for that?
Black soap as in African black soap?
They didn't specify, but let's talk about that, because I think that does require a slightly different process, maybe.
African black soap, as far as I'm concerned, it's made in Africa. Okay? I cannot replicate the conditions and the ingredients that are used in making that very particular type of soap. Okay? I have bought black soap here and incorporated it into my soap, but I would hardly call that black soap. Okay? What I do make that is black is I make activated charcoal soap. Okay? So, and I don't think that's what you're asking about, is activated charcoal. But this is activated charcoal soap, and this was hot process. Okay, this was some soap that I had made using the process that we just used with activated charcoal, which absorbs impurities. Okay, which is nice if you have like oily skin, if you have really oily skin. And so I decided that I didn't like the way it went the first time, so I cooked it on the stove, and that's hot process soap. It's the same process that we went through right now, but you're doing everything on the stove, okay? And you cook it, and you cook it. And when you finish cooking it, the saponification process has taken place. You pour it into your molds, and it's ready to use. The soap that we're making here and now, you can't use this soap for 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, now technically, this soap will be capable of coming out of this box in 2 days. Okay, a lot of times what I do, you just saw me take this soap out of the freezer. What I do is when I'm ready to unmold my soap, I'll stick it in the freezer. Okay, but that's my thing. And it makes it easier, in my opinion, for me to take it out of the mold. These soaps that we just made, these two little goodies that we made, they'll be able to come out of the bowl in 48 hours, all right? but I suggest, because the saponification process, the chemical reaction is still taking place, I would not use it as soon as I took it out of the mold, because we're respecting lye, and the lye is still active at that point. What you do is you sit it on a shelf where it can continue to evaporate and continue to mature, okay? And it should stay there for at least 4 weeks, between 4 and 6 weeks, before you actually use it, to be sure that all the lye has been chemically incorporated into the bar of soap, okay? And this is one of the reasons you need to learn how to write your own soap recipe, so that you know for yourself that you've put enough sodium hydroxide in the soap, that you have not put too much sodium hydroxide in the soap, okay? You have another question?
Yes. Some of the other questions are, can you use the soap to wash clothes as well?
Nope. Nope. You cannot use this soap to wash clothes. I made soap to wash clothes back in 1999. And it cleaned amazingly. And you know what? It left a hole in my white clothes. Okay, it left a hole. But even if apparently something wasn't right in how I did it, fine, that was years ago. But even if it were done perfectly correctly, my understanding is the oil that's in here will interact with the clothing, you know, so no, I wouldn't do it for that. I do know of people who will do cleaning soap with just pure coconut oil. Okay, and you could experiment with that, but I wouldn't do my laundry with my body soap. Number one, because the super fat would be the excess oil that's in the recipe, and now that's on your clothes. Not a good look, okay? But also there are other chemical things that go on. Long story short, the answer is no. Don't do it. You have another question?
Yes, someone is interested in knowing whether or not the turmeric will stain anything once it's in the soap.
I would suggest, because I like the activated charcoal soap that I just showed you, I'll use that as the example. Activated charcoal will stain your washcloth, okay? It's beautiful for your skin. If you have really oily skin, it's beautiful for rectifying or working with that situation, but don't use the $500 washcloth. You'll be disappointed, okay? Because it will come off in the washcloth. And when you go to wash it, all my washcloths are white, and you have to choose which washcloth you're going to use when you're using a soap that has color in it, because it's very likely to leave, color on your washcloth, and it's very possible it won't come out 100%.
Got it. Perfect.
What else do you have?
So we have about 5 more minutes. I just want to make sure that we do have a couple more questions, but I also want to make sure that you have time to finish your demonstration if you wanted to do anything else. So you let me know, just knowing the time.
Okay, well, while I answer more questions, what I'm going to do is just oil these molds. I already oiled one mold, and that's just to make sure that when I start pouring, I don't have to stop. So ask me another question.
Great. If you don't use essential oils, do you need to use a little more of any other oils?
You know what? If you don't want your soap to have a scent, your soap does not have to have a scent. That's entirely your choice. I happen to like smelly things, okay? I have a closet full of fragrance oils, and that's perfectly fine too. That's perfectly fine.
Great. A little bit more about trace. How long, I know that you mentioned that olive oil takes a little bit longer, but on average, can you gauge how long it takes?
gauge how long olive oil takes?
No, just tracing in general.
Tracing in general. Once you write your own recipe, you'll have an idea of how long your recipe takes, okay? Because there's certain things that you can add to a soap or take out of a soap to increase the trace or slow down the trace. Yeah, this is getting thick. We'll have time to pour. This thing, like for instance, this soap, the orange turmeric one, I put shea butter in there. That's going to speed up the trace. You know, there's a lot of oils, I don't know off the top of my head, but you can search it online. There's a lot of oils that will speed up your trace. Temperature will speed up your trace. Barometric pressure will speed up your trace, will affect trace, let me put it that way. So there's a lot of things. It's not that, oh, in 33.5 seconds, you know, it's going to go into trace. It's not that cut and dry. There's a little more leeway there. I can make a batch of soap in 2 hours and be out of the kitchen, you know, in less than 2 hours. But no, I can't give you a more specific time.
Okay, not a problem. Another good question here. I know some use animal fats.
Excuse me, but you won't be sitting there all night. That is the point. You won't be sitting there all night. Go ahead. Animal fats, what were you saying?
Some use animal fats, such as bacon drippings in soap making. What are your thoughts on this approach versus plant-based fats?
You know, if you like bacon drippings in your soap, you go right for it. Okay. That's not me. I have done goat's milk. I did do lard. Okay. When I made that laundry soap back in 1999, 1998, whatever it was, I did do lard. Okay. And that was the one time I did it. And that was the only time I did it. I do plant-based. It's not a moral thing for me. It's just, I like things a little bit less complicated. You know what I mean? So if you're good with bacon grease, go for it. Go for it. Just strain it through the sieve really well.
So I have a few questions related to just materials and upkeep. How do you clean the jars after?
You know, okay, so some people will leave their jars, because this is soap, they'll leave their jars and let them get hard, okay? And you'll have your instant built-in soap. Me personally, I'll fill up the sink with hot water, put everybody in there, and then I'll wash from there, okay?
Great. Related to materials, some people were asking about some other unique ways to I guess get molds, including cupcake molds or even cookie cutters. Have you used anything like that, and would you recommend them as materials to use for molds?
I would say that your imagination of what you can use as a mold is limited by being able to line it so you can get the soap back out and be able to push the soap out. It's limited to how are you going to get that soap out of the mold. So I could have a metal bowl here and put soap in there, but how do I get the soap out of the bowl? And that's really a large piece of your criteria. This is good enough. I do not have a full trace here, but I have enough of a trace that I can pour this. So
okay, I want to thank you so very much, Leslie. I actually didn't know where to break into this. This is a fascinating discussion that we're having. Thank you, Venus, for helping out, Mara and Simone as well, our facilitators, and all the participants. There's over 90 people that were on this workshop, and a lot of your questions were absolutely fabulous on the chat. And you can get the recording of this on the GreenThumb playlist. So at that, again, I want to respect our time. So we're now at a minute, at an hour, 30 minutes. This could probably go on all afternoon long, but this is the end of our workshop. Thank you so very much.
1 second, 1 second. Can I just say one last thing before I go? And this
Please
is
do.
important. Once you pour the soap into the molds, you want to cover them and put them somewhere warm and dry. And that will help the process, the chemical process to take place. Okay? That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leslie.
No problem.